A couple of weeks ago, I hopped onto the usual MMO that I play, and there's an event that I really didn't like, so I ended up just logging off after only playing for a couple of hours. But then I was so bored that I began to think about a couple of games that I'd made with friends a few years ago. I'd only done some graphic design and art related elements for them, but it was still really fun. But then I began to think, what if I did it again? But I would be alone this time and I'd be starting from basically zero programming experience. But still, I decided to give it a shot. And the project I decided to go for was a Subway Surfers-like game for PC, but more skill-based, harder, and it would have some rhythm game elements where you could make your own maps from songs and upload them. And on November 8th, the project began. I had a playable build as early as November 11th, only 3 days after starting the project. It was pretty simple. I wasn't a huge fan of how it looked yet, but it was getting somewhere, and I was beginning to actually enjoy the project and enjoy working on it. And I thought I could actually complete this, even though the end was so far away. Early on in the project, I still thought it was pretty addicting, at least for me. And I thought, at least if no one else enjoys it, then I will, and I'll enjoy making it.
Oh, I gamed. That was sick. I gamed.
I even had an option to change your controls during the playable build, and I added some shadows under the player so that you can actually see that he's jumping. Plus, it was obvious that the death animation was pretty satisfying. I made it so that the endless game mode steadily gets faster as your score increases, so I also had to add a scoring system, which is pretty simple. It just increases, I think every 8 seconds the score goes up by 1. But I was a little uncertain about whether the speed was correct, and maybe the game was still too hard, maybe the hitboxes weren't forgiving enough, and maybe if the hitboxes were more forgiving, the game could be played faster, which would make it more satisfying and make it more enjoyable to play. So I was trying to balance everything. And at this point, I kind of found a solution for it, at least a little bit. I replaced the spikes with walls, which were thinner, so that you could get behind them easier and not clip the back of them. And it made the game be able to be played faster, it made it more satisfying, exactly what I wanted. And like I said here, it improved the visibility and it reduces the dumb deaths of you just clipping behind the spike. I wasn't satisfied with how the jump felt or looked, so I improved it a little bit, but even still to this day, I probably need to go back and look at it again and try to make it feel better. I then made it so that the crouch speeds up as your score increases, so much so that you need to perfectly time your crouches so that you don't hit your head on the crouch obstacle. It's just a different way to make the game harder as your score goes up. This was a little annoying to implement though. I had to make some custom equations, and yeah, I'm not great at math, but I got it figured out. And I thought that the game was actually looking pretty satisfying right now. The crouch is quick, it's crisp, the jump is not good, but yeah, it looks pretty satisfying. The dash is really nice. What was clearly bad were the visuals, so I at least did something. I changed the font, I changed the background texture, changed some colors, and some other things that I thought hopefully improved it a little bit. I also changed the main menu and some different UI things over there. And remember how I said I literally had no programming experience before this? So this was basically the theme for this entire project. I added toggleable movement tips option. That button took me about 3 hours, but I learned a lot. Like everything I did, it took me so long because it was the first time I had done it, but I learned maybe about 100, 150, 2,000 things every single time. I also made it so that the death explosion force is stronger the higher your score is, since you're moving faster. And I made a short video out of that actually. I realized I needed a level builder. If you're going to make a rhythm game where people are going to be able to upload their own music and make stuff, then you need a level builder. Not only just for that, but I also wanted to add a campaign so that people could learn the game before they start going into levels that people have made. So I made this. It's pretty self-explanatory. But the thing on the right is actually the like a mini map type thing for it, so that once your level gets bigger, you'll be able to see all of it, which you can see in this next clip. And here it's highlighted what you can see in blue, and you can click around on that little viewfinder minimap thing to scroll around through your map. I can't stress enough how hard this was to implement for me. I do not have experience. This took me like 4 days, I think. And the most recent thing I did was added a scrolling function to it, which was so hard. I crashed my launcher 30 times. And this is what I'm going to be working on next. I'm going to make it so that instead of having to delete only the last row, you can delete specific rows in the middle, or you could just highlight them and fill them in with a specific tile. And as recently as a couple days ago, I got rid of the placeholder name and I named it cede. And since cede is like to give up, an exclamation point makes it false, then it kind of means to never give up. And I also named the maps Vokes, like invoke, you invoke the map, and the people who make the maps are Vokists. So that's the recap of the first 3.5 weeks of not only learning game development from scratch, but creating my first game for my first solo project.